Well, let's go back a little bit. What did the tiny Peter love about science, and in particular the ocean? Like, what made you want to become a scientist?
Well, I've always had an interest in science, not necessarily oceanography. I only ended up in oceanography purely by accident. Living in North Queensland, I was doing ultimately a PhD on geophysics, electromagnetism on land, basically, and a job came up at the Australian Institute of Marine Science. Didn't know anything about it, but learned a lot of oceanography. So that's the way the water moves, tides, currents, temperatures, movement of sediment, and also doing instrumentation development, making instruments for measuring things. But I ended up in oceanography purely by accident, actually.
Well, I mean, you've been studying the oceans around the Great Barrier Reef since the early 80s, and you also have done a lot of other scientific work in Australia. Now, you must have a few stories to tell, Peter, because Australia is famous for things that want to eat you and kill you. Did you ever have any close encounters where you thought, heck, I might have gone a bit too far with this science gig?
Yes, I remember being up in Kakadu National Park and we had to survey this huge mud bank on the, which river was it? The Alligator River, South Alligator River. And I was the Johnny who had to hold the surveyor's staff right down at the water's edge while somebody in the boat had his Winchester ready to shoot the crocodile, and the fella up the top of the bank had his little theodolite. And I was getting very upset because I was sinking into the mud. I ended up sinking in up to my thighs in mud, was up to my waist in water. And then this huge tourist boat comes down and starts feeding a crocodile about 200 or 300 metres down the river. So it was pretty bloody stupid what we were doing. But I must say I was very, very upset with the fellow on the theodolite who was taking too much time.
Well, it sounds like you were basically a mud popsicle with the tourist boat burling the water up as you went past. I mean, goodness gracious. It's a miracle you even survived to fight the university. But you were also, of course, a teacher, and there have been many complaints from teachers and students alike that universities are not what they once were. In particular, the learning experience seems to have shifted from being something about science to more like the approved science. Now, are you finding this a disturbing shift in the way we treat education?
Certainly, our fundamental problem that we have in society at the moment stems from the education. Higher education sets the syllabus in the schools, and then that teaches what happens from grade 1 upwards. Now, in physics, what I was doing really wasn't much of a problem. But by the time you get into marine biology, it starts to become a problem. And then when you're in the humanities, it's a disastrous situation, especially when you look at the way they teach teachers what they have to teach. So yes, if you have to go to the root cause, it's in our educational system, and our schools and our syllabi have to be sorted out sooner or later.
Well, it's not. We see speakers deplatformed and shouted down by kids wielding megaphones, and the university staff don't exactly stop this from happening. What sort of scientists will these kids become, and do you have much faith in the scientific process when the kids with megaphones are the ones responsible for independent research?
It's certainly a problem, but if you talk to a lot of young people, and I did as a university lecturer, because I was particularly close to a lot of my students coming from a little university, a little department. Yes, they've been brainwashed, but they know they're being brainwashed, and they can actually see around it. A lot of them can see around that. Yes, there's the ones with the megaphones, but they're actually in the minority. If you're in marine biology, they're not necessarily in a minority, but if you're in engineering or physics and mathematics or even in medicine, they're coming out surprisingly sensible, even though they know they must play lip service to the craziness that's going on. But don't as a young person yourself, Alexandra, don't give up on the young people. I certainly don't.